Ladies and gentlemen,
You're a wizard, Harry.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
the Epic Film Guys podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special spotlight series here on the Epic Film Guys podcast. We're going to be reviewing 9 films before this is all said and done, leading up to the release of Fantastic Beasts 2 in November of this year. It's Harry Potter time, bitches.
Yeah, Harry Potter. Harry Potter.
Meow,
Harry Potter.
meow, 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 meow.
Hey, I don't allow felines on this goddamn
I don't
show.
like that, kitten.
LoySauce.
Now get rid of it.
Get the fuck rid of it. But yes, that's right, Nick. I'm so excited about this series because for those of our listeners that don't know, I've only seen a couple of these movies, and I'm really excited to dig into them and really experience them for the first time. I've watched the first couple, but I never gone anywhere beyond that. And our friend LoySauce here is a pretty big fan, aren't you, pal?
The sauce?
The sauce, yes. I guess you could say that I'm a Harry Potter mega nerd. I'm a huge fan of this series. And, that's right. It's very exciting to be able to revisit these films, especially because Justin, you haven't watched them all the way through, and when you did watch at least the first 2, I think, or 2 or 3. It was like over a decade ago, so
That's right. It was a long time ago.
This is going to be very exciting for me. I'm very pleased.
And Nick, you as well. It's the same thing for you. You haven't watched them through in a long time either, right?
It's been a while. I did see all of them, and I came at this series really strangely because I was dating a girl at the time who was a huge Harry Potter fan, so she took me to see Deathly Hallows Part 1. That was the first movie in this franchise I'd ever seen.
Oh, man.
And
what a way to start out.
Honestly, probably still my favorite movie out of the entire lot of them. And maybe that has something to do with it. But then I went back and I watched all of them after that. So I kind of had that weird perspective thing. And yeah, I'm a huge fan of this franchise. One film is a huge exception to that. We'll talk about that when we get to it in this series. But tonight, gentlemen, we're here to talk about the Philosopher's Stone, or for us here in the States, the Sorcerer's Stone.
Now, again, why the hell is it different? Why is it not the Philosopher's Stone in the States? I don't understand.
Because the publisher in the U.S., Scholastic, didn't think that children would read a book about a philosopher. They thought Sorcerer's Stone sounded more magical and fun. So, I mean, it still works, but the Philosopher's Stone is an actual thing in mythology, and they changed it for that reason.
So they're saying that Americans are stupid. Got it. I can agree to an extent, certainly.
I mean, they're not wrong.
We are here to talk about the first Harry Potter film. And I'm going to say this out front. I'm going to say it out front because I've got the perspective of having seen all of them. By far, the most whimsical of the Harry Potter films, I would say.
Oh, sure. It's easily the most child-friendly of them all, for sure. Because, it's introducing you to this world. You're seeing it from the point of view of Harry, who is a child. He's 11 years old. And so it's very warm. It's very inviting because it's introducing you to all of these magical things for the very first time, this whole world. It's when the films progress that they get scarier and darker. But for the time being, we still have the childlike innocence of the first book in J.K. Rowling's series. And I think it translates really well to film.
I would agree 100% actually. And one of my favorite things about this film, just revisiting it, because it had been so long, was just kind of being reintroduced to all of the aspects of this world. And then, like, as we get further into this series, we'll be able to touch back on it, like how kind of nice it is that they constantly refer back to things, or they constantly revisit the same places and talk to the same people. And it's really, really nice how interconnected this whole universe feels over this series of films. So I love that all that groundwork is laid here.
Definitely. And the fact that with the exception of actors who have passed away, like Richard Harris, who plays Dumbledore, it's all the same actors, it's all the same production team, and Steve Kloves, who did the screenplay to all of them but Order of the Phoenix. So you get the sense that this is a very consistent world and a very consistent series, and that's rare in cinema, really.
Yeah.
In the film world, it's difficult to come across such a long spanning series that still has the same consistency and the same team throughout,
and the same cast for the most part, like you were saying. I mean, think about it. Like, you got to grow up with these movies, as you commented earlier on. Like, you grew up as a kid and you got to wait for another one of these movies every year to come out, and you got to look forward to that. That had to be an amazing thing. I had said to you while we were watching the film, I didn't have that. Like, Nick and I, when we were growing up, it was after Star Wars had already come and gone in the theaters as far as the original trilogy. We didn't have a series of good movies as kids that were coming out consistently to look forward to. That had to be a magical feeling as a kid.
Definitely. And the characters grow with you, the actors grow with you, and like I said, the storyline gets darker and scarier. So the storyline grows with you throughout. So it's a pretty amazing experience watching these films when they first came out, and then watching them now and kind of reflecting back. But as Nick was getting at in his intro there, like, this is there's kind of a charm to this movie because it's, where it all began. That's kind of why The Sorcerer's Stone is my favorite book of the bunch, because when I read it, I just get transported to this world all over again, and it flashes me back to when I was 7 years old and reading this book for the very first time as a wee little baby boy.
Well, that's how I approach this. I am not going to lie to you guys, because I realized this upon sitting down to watch this tonight, that I don't believe that I've ever actually watched it from start to finish all the way through. And I really wanted to approach this film from a child's perspective, because I think that's how it should be seen. And I think it's very special in that sense, because it feels childlike. It feels like that kind of movie that when you were at that age that you were, Brian, when you first saw it, that it sucks you into this magical world that's fully realized. And unlike anything else that we had ever received in cinema previous to it, or even after it, it's truly special how they created this world and how well it was done.
Definitely. And there have been so many attempts since then to recapture that same magic by doing, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, or the Golden Compass, or other failed fantasy adaptations of books, Aragon, things like that, where they're so desperate to try to recapture that Harry Potter magic. But I think this is lightning in a bottle. And I think a lot of it has to do with the director, Chris Columbus. I mean, every creative decision that carries over into the other films, every casting decision comes from him. And I think that's a lot of what you can draw the film's success to. Having to wrangle so many child actors and having to, I just imagine it was a huge undertaking for him. And I think that's why he only did the first two, because I think he was like, all right, this is too much pressure. I don't want to do another one after this. But
I think he learned how to work with child actors the best on Nick's favorite film of all time, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
That's true. That is true. Right, Nick?
I was trying to
fuck off, Justin.
There we go.
Sorry, I had to throw that jab in, my friend.
Well, so Justin, because this is the first time you've watched it from beginning to end, so you say, what did you think of it as a film?
Well, first off and foremost, I just have to say, because we're already getting deep into this, but there may be one or two people on the planet that have not watched this film, kind of like myself. And for those that are not aware, this is the first installment of the Harry Potter film series, and it's about Harry, who is rescued from outrageous neglect of his aunt and uncle. He's a young boy with a great destiny. He needs to prove his worth while attending Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. It's under the stairs, man. He's locked in there. There's like a small vent. They even closed the vent on this kid, man. I'm like, the film opens and he's underneath the stairs, man. You see like dust flying on his face, and you see he's pretty used to it. He's fine with it.
I love the Dursleys. I love like every like entry in the series where you get to start back at the Dursley home and you get to kind of just spend a couple minutes with them, and I love it. I love the Dursleys. They're
horrible played to perfection. Those
it's hilarious. Yeah, they're great. this is the beginning. So this is the film that needed to work the best to introduce the audience to these characters and work so that we could get the sequels. Now, I don't know. You would probably be able to answer this question. Did they plan the films as a series ahead of just doing the first one? So like, did they shot them all individually, correct?
Yes, except for the Deathly Hallows.
God, they were where in the books by the time this movie came out. Rowling was already several books in by the time this film came out. I mean, they definitely knew they were going to do franchise out of this.
Yeah, because I think the fourth book had been written by the time that the movie came out.
Yeah.
Like I said, I looked at this through the eyes of a child. I really tried to transport myself back to the 90s, the early 90s when I would have been the age of a kid that would have been excited for this type of movie. And it works on pretty much all levels that would be necessary for me to be entertained. And as an adult, I'm entertained because I like all of the characters. They're all very interesting. The world of Hogwarts, it's so awesome. And man, there's some amazing sets in this thing. The production design on this thing, the costume design.
Stuart Craig, production designer.
Like nothing else that like we'd ever seen before previous to this, as far as how fully realized it was and how much work went into it. It seems so larger than life. And
they do
I think
a perfect job of selling this entire world that they've created in all of these films. Really, the production design is just outstanding in every one of them. You never feel like you're not just fully immersed in this world and this battle between, light and dark and all these different aspects that go on, especially when you get into the later films in the series. It all really, really feels exceptionally engrossing and authentic, I think.
Yeah, and I think starting right off with the characters, I mean, you gotta love these young actors that were picked perfectly by Chris Columbus. You can't even deny that at all. Daniel Radcliffe, particularly for me, he's a huge standout because he's so young. And, mentioning that Chris Columbus had worked with the young Macaulay Culkin on the Home Alone films, he so much reminds me of a young Macaulay Culkin. His eyes, his expressions in this, you could just see that this young actor has so much potential and so much life and acting ability, and he shines in this movie. I immediately, from the forefront of the film, feel for this character, the neglect that he's dealing with, his search for finding out who he really is and his place on this earth, and seeing him grow throughout this film was a great treat for me. I think he's the huge standout within the child actors, at least in this film. He just so great at playing the role.
Definitely. It's interesting because I have seen the other films. It's just amazing how green they are. They're so. I mean, they're new to acting, relatively.
Brand new.
Daniel Radcliffe had done like one other like TV movie before, like David Copperfield or something. But these actors are so green. You can tell that they have listened to director Chris Columbus's direction and that's exactly what they're sticking to. Because Chris Columbus as a director of children before, he knows how to get a performance out of young people. But it's not really until the third or fourth film that you really see them make these decisions as actors on their own. So it's fascinating to watch early on just how kind of precious they are. I don't know. They're adorable, and I think they're chosen perfectly. I mean, I love Rupert Grint as Ron. He brings a lot of humor to the film. His facial expressions are priceless. And then you have Emma Watson as Hermione, who, again, is perfect. I think they tried to make her a little bit more Hermione-like as she was in the books. Again, comparing it to the books, she's a little bossier and she has the bushy hair. And at one point, they gave Emma Watson fake teeth. At the very, very end, when they're boarding the Hogwarts Express at the end, that was the first scene they shot. That was the first day. And so if you look closely, Emma Watson is wearing false teeth because Hermione has two very large front teeth, like buck teeth almost in the books. So exactly. I just think it's fascinating going back and looking at how young these actors are and growing into the roles as they progress and growing into amazing actors.
I think it lends a nice naivety to their characters in the film because of that as well. They get to walk into this world and we get to kind of see it through their wide-eyed, just like awe when they look
Definitely.
at everything, and it really helps to sell because
man, that scene when they're in the boats and you see the castle and the John Williams music swells and amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's some amazing cinematography in this film as well. That's also an excellent point to bring up. But yeah, I really think that their performances are what sell this world to us because it's so fantastical. There is so much, just so much. I mean, this film is like really a series of kind of set piece after set piece introducing another layer of the magical world. You get to introduce to Diagon Alley, you get introduced to Gringotts, you get introduced to Hogwarts, and then there's all these sublayers within Hogwarts, the moving staircases and everything, the giant banquet hall where
the paintings that move as well.
Paintings that move, like there's so many different layers, so they don't ever really try to overwhelm you with too much of it at once, which I feel was also a really nice way to really invest you in the world, because they could have just literally thrown all this stuff at you and then tried to explain it on the fly. Some films do that where they'll just drop you in the middle of it and then you kind of have to pick it up as you go. And I don't think that would have worked with a film series like this because there's so much material left to get through. Yeah. That you would be still like, you don't want to be like 4 films in and be like, wait a minute, what the fuck is Gringotts? Huh? You know?
Well, I imagine that was a challenge while Steve Kloves was writing the screenplay, because he consulted with J.K. Rowling a lot, and she was like, nope, you have to include this detail because that's going to be important later on.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the films were like that. Like, Alfonso Cuarón with The Prisoner of Azkaban, he wanted to have a certain scene in a graveyard at Hogwarts, and J.K. Rowling had to tell them there is no graveyard at Hogwarts. Like, she knows, you know, she's the creator of this world, and she's able to guide the screenwriters as they write these films. You hear stories about, you know, Steven Spielberg was at one point attached to direct Harry Potter, and he was going to make it an animated film, and he was going to do the first 3 books into one movie, and I just imagine how much of a nightmare that would have been.
How would that even have worked, man? That's not even possible. I mean,
I don't think it did work, and that's why it went the direction that it did.
Oof. But, I can't even imagine.
Rewatching this film, and I've always felt this, but I do think the film is front loaded with so much stuff that the plot doesn't really kick in until the 3rd act. The movie is almost over when it kind of becomes about something.
Yeah.
The movie does take its time introducing you to the world, but it takes a long time for us to feel any kind of tension or any kind of real story, because it is a collection of set pieces. And I do think that this film is it's not the pacing is not the best because of that. Because when you're reading it as a book, you're kind of attending class with Harry, and as a book, it reads different than a film, which has rising and falling action. And this film doesn't really have that. That's just the vibe that I get from it. What do you guys think?
I agree 100%. I really feel like, to be 100% honest, I mean, I would agree that it's paced really, really slowly. But yeah, I think that the front half of this film, or the front maybe 2/3 of this film, are the better parts of it. Because, I mean, the plot of the film, the actual like plot of the film, almost has a way, because you've just been literally just information dump after information dump after information dump. It's all important, but then the film finally decides to get to the point, and it's like, oh, okay, now we have to like actually have them do something. And by the time you get there, it really feels like it was just okay, fine, tacked on at the end, and then you go along with it. I mean, especially with how deeply, I mean, I don't want to get too much into other films versus this one here, but like a lot of the other films in this series are insanely plot driven. There's a lot of story to chew through, and
very
this film
complex,
is very opposite of that.
Yeah, I mean, not to say that the film is not still entertaining, because it is, but I do think that in terms of pacing, I think it's just because when you watch the other films, you are already introduced to the world. So you can just hit the ground running, and the story kicks off immediately. And with this one, you don't really have that luxury because you aren't introduced to the world yet. So
that's why I think it's necessary. I feel like
it is necessary.
Coming from my perspective,
it's not necessarily a criticism. It's just an observation, I suppose.
Exactly. I think it's to its benefit for if it's something that is planned out. Now, obviously, like I said earlier, like I didn't know how far ahead they planned. This isn't a situation where they filmed, you know, the first 2 or first 3 films at once. You know, they made this one movie hoping for it to be a success, knowing there was a built-in fan base for it. I feel like it was necessary for this to become a franchise. We need all that stuff, just like the first Star Wars. Think about the first Star Wars and how much happens, and it's the same thing. It's very slow in the beginning of the first Star Wars. I feel like you get all this information about the Force and the Jedi, and it's very similar in that sense where you learn who these characters are, then you start to begin to grow with them, and then stuff starts happening. And I think that for me, I really attach myself to the Harry character because of the fact that, he's trying to figure out who he is. He wants to know who his parents are more and more, find out more about them. He's never really known them. And so there's that part of the story that I enjoyed. And then, it's an adventure. There's a mystery there. They're slowly learning more about Hogwarts and, learning with their wizard techniques, and then he's trying to figure out, hey, what's this mystery, what's here, what's there, and they're searching and they're sneaking around. That was all stuff that I just enjoyed. It's again very childlike type situations, and that's what makes this, for me, it's a kids movie. It certainly is. It's just slightly better than most kids movies are meant to be and that ever end up being. So that's why it's so special, I think.
I'd say it's leagues better than most.
Well, yeah,
kids
that's
movies.
what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at. I mean, well, to be fair, LoySauce, you're the one that continues to watch kids movies at your age now. I rarely ever watch kids movies, so I don't really know.
No shame in that whatsoever.
Just saying.
There's some great kids movies out there.
I know there are. I'm just saying that you'd be the expert because, if there's a movie coming out that's G-rated that's meant for newborn babies, I know you'll go see it opening weekend.
Thank you.
I think that one thing I want to mention here, and it's kind of just an aside, just for whatever reason, but I think just knowing how great Ralph Fiennes is as Voldemort in all of the films that he appears in this series, I really, really hate just the CGI head that's in the. It just does not have the same, because Ralph Fiennes is so good that it just really feels kind of underwhelming. But that's knowing context for later. That's not really as important. Now it's kind of one of those things where I don't want them to do this, so don't take it the wrong way. But where you could see them going back with a special edition and putting Ralph Fiennes in it instead.
Ooh,
I'm really glad they didn't do that.
I'm not saying I want that, but I mean, still, it's
I think it works. Because
it's such a small part of it that it goes by.
It's a really
quickly.
creepy. It's a really creepy image for sure. And I think that cold, high whisper kind of thing is how Voldemort's voice was described in the books. And that's not what Ralph Fiennes does with the role at all. So, I mean, I think that's the vision that they had of Voldemort initially. Of course, they ended up taking it a different direction. But you're right. In hindsight, it is a little bit... It is a little bit odd to see
are just
a CGI head.
Though. I mean, really, they are. Those are just little nitpicks. I love the cast in the film. I love Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid is easily one of my favorite
Robbie
characters.
Coltrane.
He's so great. I was just about to mention the rest of the cast.
He's so lovable and so he's in this kind of a film that is really doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of introducing you to a universe. It really needs a guide like this who is so investing and is so inviting as a character. You just feel his warmth radiate off of the screen whenever he appears, and you really see why Harry attaches himself to him instantly.
I feel like he's embedded in a Chris Columbus movie. When I watch this, I feel like this character could have been in one of the Home Alones or something. There's a pure warmth to this character that you do. I agree. The puffy beard, the long hair, and he's jolly, almost like a Santa Claus in a sense, even though he's not the smartest, tool in the shed, so to speak, because he likes to let out all the information to, the trio so that they can go get in more trouble. And he says that a lot in the movie. Let's face it, a lot in the movie. But I felt like with his voice and his, his everything about this character, man, I feel like I've seen them before, but I loved him. And I got to say, so many people in this movie that are no longer with us. It's truly sad to watch, but man, I fucking love Alan Rickman in this movie. He's so
Rickman.
Oh god, he's so good.
You don't even know the half of it. Just wait.
I know. Believe me, no. I know enough from fans and memes and Harry Potter people that I've been friends with for a while. His face showing up a lot and a lot of stuff about him. I know that I'm in for a lot. I love him as an actor.
Well, it's one of those things too, where LoySauce mentioned it earlier, where he was talking about they would use Rowling as just kind of an information deck, like a Harry Potter and encyclopedia, as they should, obviously, but like there's different cast members that have important moments that are coming up in books she hadn't even written yet. And like she pulled Alan Rickman aside and like explained Snape's entire like serious character arc to him, like from the first movie before she ever even wrote it.
Oh, wow.
You know, so that way,
That's
like
insane.
he knew
He had to keep the secret.
and had to keep that secret like the whole time. But yeah, she told him like when they were filming this film, like, okay, this is why Snape is the way he is. And it's like, when you watch it in context, like with all of the movies, and once you know everything, it's like, it's great. It's really great. Yeah, Alan Rickman in this entire series is fantastic. I love him.
Absolutely. And also John Hurt.
Yeah,
he has
John
one
Hurt, man.
he has one scene, but it's one of my favorites in the entire movie as
He's
Mr.
so
Ollivander.
great.
I love that scene. That's honestly, to be fair, like as a scene in general, as far as me starting to mention my favorite things in the movie, as far as scenes, I love that scene. It's so fun. And you don't even know what's going to happen. Like when they're testing wands out, and it's such an entertaining scene. And I think it's one of the best creatively shot scenes too, as well in the film.
Yeah, and John Hurt, again, like he's a kindly character, but he's also, there's something a little creepy about him when he's, you know, talking about Voldemort, and he gets that like kind of raspy whisper, and it's incredibly mysterious and at the same time inviting, because, you know, you get the sense that Ollivander is a kindly character, but I don't know, there's just something creepy about that scene too. That's just, it's magical. I can't really describe it any other way. And,
really,
you know,
a scene in the Harry
peace.
Potter film is magical.
It's shocking, I know.
Magic isn't real, Brian. Don't you know? Magic isn't real.
Quiet, Uncle Vernon.
God,
I do really love Richard Harris as Dumbledore in not only this film, but we'll obviously talk about him when we talk about the next film as well. So it was very tragic that he unfortunately passed before he could, you know, obviously see the rest of these through. And, you know, Michael Gambon, LoySauce is right. He definitely does take a little bit of time to warm to as the character, especially in the third film, I think. But
well, Goblet of Fire, I think, is where he's the most hard. It's hard to buy him as Dumbledore in Goblet of Fire, and again, we'll get to that.
yeah.
But
we'll get to Goblet of Fire, all right.
But I do think that Richard Harris is the perfect Dumbledore. I mean, if you just the way he was described again in the books, and you just get the sense that he was made for that. You know, he's born to play that role.
Yeah.
And it is very sad that we didn't get to see him play out his epic character arc in the later series.
You're teasing something. You're getting me excited here.
Yeah,
man, there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, but I mean, he was very old, you know, already, and you can tell in Chamber of Secrets he's very sickly. But at any rate, I still think he plays the character pitch perfectly in this, and it fits the vibe of the first two films, which are lighter in tone. I think to have a Dumbledore who's very warm and kind, and there's an air of mischief to him for sure.
I have to bring up immediately, LoySauce, because you had mentioned this while we were watching the film. Now, to be clear, I have to gloat a little bit, just like I do on every regular episode of the Epic Film Guys podcast. I purchased blindly, because I had never seen all of these movies, the Ultra 4K Blu-ray box set of the Harry Potter films, which Warner Brothers have so kindly put out and done such a great job. I was absolutely blown away by the visual presentation of this film. But as we were sitting there watching it, and I'll get to the CGI in a moment here, you'd mentioned this is one of the best John Williams scores ever done.
Without a doubt.
The score in this film is incredible.
I didn't even realize, man. Oh my God, you guys. Like, seriously, I never listened to it through and through. I was blown away. That's some of the best work he's done at all, ever. Like,
yes.
It's right up there with Star Wars, man, and his Superman score. It's insane how good it is.
When you listen through it, too, especially when you watch through the film, like, just knowing John Williams' work, like, it's definitely a Williams score. Like, it definitely has that kind of signature to it. But, yeah, it's one of his most fantastic pieces of work that he's ever done, especially the main theme. You know, the that theme is just
it's so
incredible.
Memorable. You don't get themes like that anymore, Nick. You really don't get where they get stuck in your head like that. Williams is so good at doing that. But I mean, even this is so special. Like, to get everything about this movie, when you look at the visual presentation, the marketing, and everything, you even had the poster for it, and you have the John Williams music. Yeah, Drew Struzan did it, and it's like you can't deny how special this film is, even if it is just at its core a kids movie. I mean, I could see as a kid, there's great adventure in this. There's mystery. There's all of these beautiful things to look at. And creatures, man, the creature effects and the makeup in this, I could keep going on and on about it. I mean, the makeup effects, we see Warwick Davis, very used to being in makeup, and he played Nick's favorite character in Return of the Jedi. What's the little bear's name?
Wicket.
The bear Wicket that throws sticks at
Piece of
stormtroopers and big fat fucking pilot. We see him as a goblin early on. Hit him! No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to the cute little bear. I may squeeze him and hug him until he can't breathe anymore and hear him going, ugh. I'd enjoy that sound. But we see him as a goblin with this awesome makeup job, man. I was just like stunned by it. It was fantastic.
Well, and as Professor Flitwick as well, the charms teacher. Yeah, the Gringotts scene is also one of my favorites in the film because I've always wanted to like explore the catacombs of and ride on that little cart that takes you from one vault to the other.
I think
it looks like fun.
I love the Gringotts scene in this film just because it introduces it. But I mean, obviously, there's scenes in later films that are going to dwarf it.
Oh,
so
yes.
We'll have to wait and talk about them when we get there.
For sure. We can't have an episode on Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and not mention the Quidditch scene.
I thought you were going to talk about Fluffy.
Oh, well, Fluffy's also great, the three-headed dog. Those effects still hold up pretty
Let's
damn
address
well.
that now, right now, guys, because that was going to be my next thing. So you just brought it up. I'll throw it to Nick, because Nick's like the one. He's the naysayer. He's the guy that's always like, this shit doesn't hold up, man. How do you think the effects hold up while viewing it now?
Well, I think that in LoySauce was actually mentioning Quidditch. I think that the effects hold up in every scene in this film, but for Quidditch. It just...
Oh.
It really feels like it's just effects nonsense. A lot of just kind of visual noise being splattered at the screen. A lot of backgrounds just seem like they're not fully rendered, or they're just like it just when I'm watching it, like it feels really cartoonish as I'm watching it. And like I said, like the Fluffy, and you've even got like the centaur in the woods, all these other different elements of the film that are also CG that feel, you know, like more well realized effects. But I think the Quidditch sequence was just so much. I think there was just so much to it that it just, I don't know. It's especially knowing, like, and I hate to do this. I hate to constantly refer to future films in the series, but I think future films in the series really make Quidditch a lot better than the first film does.
I would agree with you. When you read it in the book, you're like, how are they going to, like, you're trying to visualize it. And I think they did it so perfectly in the film, bringing it to life and making it an exciting match, you know, an exciting game to watch. But you're right. I mean, I feel like in the Quidditch scene, the effects are better than, for example, when Neville Longbottom is flying around on the broom, and that stuff looks pretty dated. Or like when Harry's on the troll's shoulders, the mountain troll.
Oh yeah,
in the bathroom.
that immediately stuck out to me, dude. Immediately, I literally equated it to.
There's a couple of effects in this film that definitely feel like they're of their time. You know, and I mean, like I said, I don't
early
let that ruin
2000s
the
though.
charm
That was
of it.
pretty impressive.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, but like I said, I don't let that take away from the charm of the film. I don't let that take away from, you know, how I react to and kind of relate to the film, because I still think that
you still have the great characters and, you know, all of that.
And extremely impressive sets.
The film
dude.
really,
Full
I mean, if
sets.
you think about it, the film, I mean, it kind of, it forces you to forgive it. I mean, think Lord of the Rings is kind of the same way, where it's placing you squarely in this really fantasy-driven setting with all these, you know, weird, wacky things and magic and everything else. So I think when you go into that with that kind of mindset in your brain, like, you're just more forgiving of it. I just think it's not as important as it is in a film where it's meant to be more quote unquote realistic. Whether it's set in the real world or not is another thing, but you know, it just, your brain is just, you have that amount of forgiveness just kind of automatically built in for a film like this. I mean, the effects aren't nearly as bad as some other films that came out in this era.
Exactly.
In terms
That's
of
the main
CGI,
thing I was just
so,
going to reference.
yeah.
I was going to compare it to, for example, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. A lot of it is similar, where, you know, the backgrounds are fully CG rendered, the characters are CG rendered. And this is something that could be talked about in future episodes. I know I'm the only one with the setup, but I mean, with these films getting remastered on new formats, and, you know, it's only going to get to a point where, you know, I mean, how far can they go when you're like, this doesn't look real at all. I mean, I still feel like this one holds up better than a lot of the other ones because they're not going in and doctoring the effects. It's exactly how they did it. And I feel like for the time period, man, this was revolutionary as far as, you know, the way they were blending the green screen backgrounds with the character. It's very well done. It doesn't look cheap at all. The budget for this movie, I didn't even take the time to look it up, but must have been astronomical because of the sets and the amount of CG work that had to go into this thing.
I'm sure they sank a lot of money into it thinking, I mean, because this was around the time when Harry Potter fever was at its height. I mean, this book series was huge. So I'm assuming Warner Brothers knew that they had something special on their hands. And actually, Warner Brothers had purchased the rights to Harry Potter a couple years before they started work on the movie. Because I have a Scabbers doll from or I had at one point a Scabbers doll from like 99 or something. And that was way before the movie obviously came out. So Warner Brothers already had been making money off of merchandising and stuff.
Yeah. So production budget estimated box office mojo was 125 million. Domestic gross was 317 million. And world fucking wide, guys, this thing made $974 million at the box office, which, I mean, think about it. This is 2001. I mean, movies made a lot of money back then.
3 of them.
But holy shit, dude. Holy shit. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of people saw this movie, except for me for some reason. I think it's because I was in high school and, you know, it's a kid's movie. Probably.
You couldn't abide children's films.
Of course not.
All right,
I couldn't have smoked weed to go watch this.
What I want to do is we're running on time here, so I want to just kind of run around the horn. And I mean, we don't have to necessarily throw a score at it. I don't really care about it as much in these kind of spotlight things because we're obviously celebrating the films more so than anything else. But I want to go around and just anything else that stood out to you or anything else that maybe detracted from the experience, and just, you know, final thoughts.
Well, I guess I'll speak to that. Just revisiting again, I was just again so impressed at how Chris Columbus was able to again make these creative choices that affected the next 7 films. He picked the perfect cast. Hogwarts is perfect, exactly how I envisioned it always. And it's something that still captures my heart, and I'm sure captures the hearts of children everywhere. It's kind of like a modern day, you know, Wizard of Oz. It's almost like a movie that, as a parent, you have to pass down for generations, I think. And of course, watching it on 4K Ultra HD, Justin's beautiful 4K TV. I mean, I'd only ever
gloat previously. For me. Keep gloating for me. I don't even have to gloat for myself.
That's why.
Fuck off, Justin.
That's why I'm, you know, saying it with a little bit of facetiousness.
You get to enjoy it though. You get to come over whatever you want and enjoy it. So
yeah. So I'd only ever seen the film on DVD. So watching it tonight was like watching it for the first time.
Except for the theaters. I thought you said you saw it in theaters, right?
Oh, well, yes, of course. I did see it in theaters. I actually left school early to go see it in theaters. I have a vivid memory of that. And I remember almost shitting my pants in the scene in the dark forest with Voldemort drinking the unicorn blood. And that was a terrifying scene when you're 8, you know? So I am very much excited to revisit the rest of the films in this series. I'm excited to watch Justin's reactions to what's coming because, oh man.
The only way that I'll kind of finish off my thoughts is I said earlier on, I watched this film through the eyes of a child, and I can't even think of another movie in recent memory that really made me feel childlike when I was sitting there watching it with my eyes wide, really just like living through these characters and experiencing this adventure that they're on. And man, it's a purely special world that Hogwarts is, and I really enjoyed it a lot. Not gonna lie, I haven't felt that way watching a movie since, you know, Home Alone 2: Lost in New York, Nick's favorite movie that Chris Columbus also directed. That he, you know, I know how much you love that movie, Nick. So no, in all seriousness though, it is really awesome. When I went to Universal Studios Orlando and I went to the wizardly world of Harry Potter, I wasn't all that excited because I'm like, I haven't seen these movies. I don't really care about it. It's not a big deal to me. And when I witnessed it, it was so impressive, so huge. And it was the most packed part of the park. It was packed full on a weekday. Hundreds of thousands of people in there. And then I went on the ride, which was so cool. And I'm like, this has got to be something really special. This is up there with Star Wars and the likes of that, where there's fans all over the world, thousands upon thousands of fans. And this movie, watching it tonight, made me realize even more so why this film is so special. If I had to put a rating on it, I would give it an 8 out of 10. Definitely up there as far as a kid's movie, a great adventure fantasy film. I really enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it's a great film. It really is. And there's really not all that much more to say about it. It is really, really exciting to kind of be on the ride along with Justin as he gets to experience most of these films for the first time. And like I said, I had that really unique kind of experience towards it where I got to experience a later film in the saga, and then I got to go back and kind of see how it got to that point. So like I said, it's a standout, especially, you know, the later films in the series definitely take a much darker tone. Some of them do anyway. And, you know, this is by far not my favorite film in the series. I don't even want to claim that, but
No.
This is a great one. This is, I mean, if you're talking about like probably, I don't know where I would rank these films. Maybe we should do that like at the very end after we do Deathly Hallows or something. We can do all of them
Ixnay
together.
On my 8A out of 10A.
I'm just saying ranking them. Like we can rank them and say which ones were our overall favorites and like put them kind of in order of, you know, how much we liked them or whatever, you know?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
But before we wrap out here, before we get out of here, we're going to get nuts, Justin. Is that correct?
That's right. We're going to get nuts. LoySauce has a little question to ask you guys. Now, I just mentioned earlier on in the episode that I did get the 4K box set. That's right, which means it came with a digital code for all of the movies in that box set that are in 4K format. So we're going to be giving away that digital code at the end of the series, right, Nick? It's going to be at the end of the series.
Yeah, at the end of the series. So after we finish doing all of the Harry Potter films, we won't include Fantastic Beasts in that. We'll do that separate. But yeah, once we get all the way through Deathly Hallows Part 2, we're going to do trivia every single one of these every single time. And every time you get a trivia answer correct, you get another entry into that overall prize. And yeah, all 8 of the Harry Potter films. You can't beat that.
So LoySauce, you're the Potter fan here. What trivia question are you going to ask Epic Film fans so they can get entered in to win those movies?
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So for all 8 Harry Potter films, this is the first question. This is the first installment. So here is the question. What are the 4 enchanted obstacles guarding the Sorcerer's Stone? There are 4 of them.
How dare you?
No, Paul, there are. Why? I don't even know why he would do that.
One more time for him, LoySauce. One more time in case they weren't listening.
Certainly. What are the 4 enchanted obstacles guarding the Sorcerer's Stone?
And you'll be able to let us know over in the Hobsters dumpster, because I'm going to post up the little trivia Google page thing that I have. And yeah, let us know. And once we get to the end, like I said, we're going to be giving away the digital code for all 8 Harry Potter films. I can't wait. I can't wait to get further into this series because I've still got my favorite films to come, and that's what I really, really love about this series is like my favorite films. Like I can watch some of the films in this series and have a lot.
Over and over again.
Yeah.
Yep.
There are some of them where I've just
probably
gone
recite
crazy.
the dialogue.
Yeah.
And sound effects of the first 2 films, especially.
Jesus.
And the music, of course.
And the music. Well, gentlemen, that's it. So I am Nick.
I'm Justin.
And I'm LoySauce.
LoySauce. The sauce.
A.K.A. Brian.
A.K.A. LoySauce.
Loy,
A.K.A.
A1 steak sauce.
A1 steak.
LoySauce.
LoySauce.
LoySauce. Whatever the fuck that means.
You guys are amazing. So thank you all very, very much for listening. And it's Leviosa, not Leviosa, dicks.
We will see you at the movies.
Oddfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at oddfixnetwork.com.